I thought I'd do a bit of a talk on how to build high-performing teams in the modern era. And by modern era, I'm conscious very much of the fact that I've got almost 30 years experience of digital now, which is a terrifying fact. As I've come through different organizations and different scales of organizations, one of the things I'm proud to say I've focused on is how to really build and harness high-performing teams made up of different skill sets. And it's even more important today as we've gone through these phases of hybrid working, which came about during COVID. We've gone through globalization and distributed teams, which had its own influence and bearing on things. And now with the advent of AI-driven tools, we're starting to see an amplification, but potentially also a replacement of certain elements of the team, some for good, some for bad. So it's important as a builder and a leader of teams to understand how to navigate some of this treacherous path and find our ways to success throughout it. I think there's a lot of people in this space who claim the ability to build high-performing teams, but the reality is it's actually quite a rare skill set. There's a lot of talk about the difference between doers and managers, but actually I think team leading, particularly strategic team leading and vision setting, is a different skill set in itself. And that ability to manage a team on the day-to-day is very different to leading a strategic team over a period of time. And it's not necessarily a long period of time. It's usually quite a well-defined period of time, say a 3-year span or a 5-year span with specific objectives in mind. The abilities to do that, they're a little bit specialized and they are based on certain skills which do need to be coached or learned along the way. They're not something you just fall into. So I thought I'd share some of the key structural elements to how I approach this, and I'd love to hear others' thoughts as well. So my first point in this series is really around vision and alignment. And I think a lot of people just rely on luck and chemistry to pull a team together, but really what's at the heart of a successful team is having a clear vision laid out. And that vision needs to be quantifiable, it needs to be specific, and it needs to be time-boxed. So if you don't define that vision, it's very hard to get a team of particularly high-performing people, but also hopefully quite opinionated people to pull in the same direction. What I found is if you get a bunch of very smart people, very motivated people, and you should only be selecting motivated people to build a team around, when you build a team, a group of these people, and put them in a space with a challenge in front of them, if you don't clearly set out what success looks like, what that vision looks like, they'll begin to gap fill, and they'll start to provide answers to that solution that might suit their agenda and what they believe is the right answer, but it won't necessarily be your answer. And what that results in is a little bit further down the line, you have to do a bit of a reset and bring everybody back to the same page. And once people have been working with certain things in mind, it can get quite hard to pull them back from that. So my first guidance is be specific and deliberate about your vision and communicate it regularly so everybody's on the same page. And it's okay to discuss it. It's okay for people to dissent. It's okay for people to give feedback. What's important is that you come away from these vision sessions all aligned. Whether those challenges have been accepted or discarded, we need to be clear on where we're going as a team, and everybody needs to be pulling in the same direction. The other aspect is you need to understand how each individual goals contribute to that overall success. So the other thing we need to be mindful of is that every individual will only be successful if their own individual goals contribute to the overall vision success. So I'm a big fan of the Google OKR framework, a KPI framework, which gives people specific objectives, which stretch them a reasonable amount and give them a target to aim for without giving them something they feel crushed by, but that transparently ladders up to the overall vision that they're part of. So they understand how every action they take contributes towards it, and how every action they take which isn't aligned to a specific objective might not contribute to what we're all trying to achieve, and actually might be a waste of time, or it might be a distraction from the main goal. And it could be that those are worthy tasks in themselves, but if they're not tracked, then they should be discussed, because maybe they should be included, or maybe the vision needs to be changed to reflect them. But most importantly, everybody needs to come away knowing that they're clear on how can they be successful, and by doing so, how can the team be successful. The second aspect is around roles and responsibilities. So part of knowing your individual objectives means to know the boundaries of your role, what you have control of and what you don't have control of. I'm a big fan of giving people as much ownership as possible over their areas. So if you have a team that needs developing, then you set a budget for that team and you let that specific team leader manage the training budget, manage the resources they have to control, allow them to make decisions, don't micromanage them, give them the ability to control how their team can be most effective, where people are allocated on projects, how much of their time is kept aside for development. Obviously, there's constraints that are needed by the business to allow people to deliver the expected amount of value, but it's rare that you want to run every team member at 100 miles an hour, 100% efficiency every hour, every day, because by doing that, you stagnate the team and you prevent growth. So allowing people to control what's within their remit and being clear what that remit is a great way of enabling your teams to run as efficiently as possible. The other aspect is being firm and specific around accountability management. If you agree a target with somebody and they accept it and then they don't hit it, then there needs to be repercussions. And the first of those repercussions means reassessing the target to understand, was it set incorrectly to start with? People are very unlikely to be stupid or lazy working against a goal. You've hired them for a reason. They're there because of their experience, because of their skill set and their commitment. So if there's a reason a target has been missed, there's generally a good reason for it. So perhaps the mistake was setting the target inaccurately. On those rare occasions where it is down to individual performance, then there are different tools to deal with that. And we can talk about that on another session. But I believe most of the time people are well-meaning and want to succeed. So it's about giving them the ability to be successful and the support they need to be successful. And when something fails, it's about everybody feeling comfortable enough to understand and to own up to why something might have failed and what's the part they might have played in that failure and how could it have been avoided. And if necessary, resetting targets so we have a better chance of success. My third aspect I want to talk about is really the talent makeup of a team. So it's very tempting to say, I want the best team out there, and it wouldn't be the first time that I've heard people say, I'm going to build the best of the best, and that you can do that. It's very easy to make a high-performing team out of rock stars. The challenge is that they're typically the best of the best for a reason. They can be quite expensive, and if you've got money to burn and you can throw money at a solution, then great, go and find the best people you can possibly find and understand you're going to be competing against lots of other people who want these people as well. So you will pay for that privilege to get that brilliance, that dedication, that experience of what you want. I'm personally a big fan of a mixture of team ability. So picking people who have been there, got the t-shirt, done it before, because they bring something to the table. I'm also a big fan of enabling people who are hungry and waiting for that chance to step up and prove themselves. I think by having that mixture of seasoned warhorse with a young challenger who's prepared to push the envelope a bit and do things that haven't been done before, equally with people who are very new to their career supporting them, I think you get an unparalleled level of energy and commitment to success and the willingness to try different things and not be scared of what might be possible, what might not be possible. So I do believe there is a place for having those experts on the team. I don't believe that it makes sense to be black and white, so always get everybody who's new to a leadership role or everybody who's seasoned, brilliant, industry recognized practitioners. I think there's a good mix between. I think it's also worth acknowledging the fact that different personality types have a role to play in this as well. So I'm aware of an inclination that I have towards type A personalities, people who have a bit of hustle about them, who are a bit aggressive in how they come across, who push things and try to get results no matter what. But I'm also conscious that if you build a team of those people, not only is it very painful to manage them and to keep them aligned in the same direction, but actually you can miss some of the detail and the rigor and the craftsmanship that comes with the person who is committed to getting every I dotted, every T crossed, who's really down the weeds, that maybe doesn't present as well, isn't quite as salesy as your type A personality, but actually has more of an emphasis and a love for the detailed level, polished product. So I think that you need a mix. And I think by creating a mix, you inevitably create friction as people run at different paces. They will want things done faster, they will want things done slower, they will want things done just enough versus having a perfect answer. And that balance is part of your role as a team leader to make sure you get the right impetus, the right balance to keep them all effective without anybody feeling disenfranchised or frustrated that everything always seems to go against them. The other element is obviously diversity, and it's important to understand that if your team is all of a certain demographic, a certain age, a certain origin, the risk is that you're only building products and services that will be attracted to people of that mix. So if that's what your demographic is and you don't want to stretch it, then you can just about get away with it. But in this day and age, I think our customers and the people using our products come from all over, and it's very hard to predict exactly who is the personality, who's the individual behind the usage of your output. So we are better placed to look to deliberately diversify our teams to provide a more representative approach to how we think about things and what our output looks like, be that gender bias or race bias or origin bias, or even thinking about people who are neurodiverse or as neurotypical. Having a good mix of approaches on the team will inevitably lead to a wider, better product as you get something which is better designed for the people that it's aimed at. And it's worth remembering that neurodiversity is something which can be a little bit of an interesting topic, but 20% of the people in society are neurodiverse. So ignoring them is quite a lot of the community that you're potentially not serving as well as you might. So my fourth point is what leadership style is the most suited to this. And honestly, I have a light answer for this, which ultimately is the one that is most authentic to you. So you can't pretend to be something you're not. You can't suddenly pretend to be Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs. You need to be you, but you need to be you on your best day. So understanding how your team is effective is largely comes down to having clear vision and clear decision making that they can get behind. So they understand what's expected of them and they understand the remits of the role, how far they can move to make that happen. Nobody likes being micromanaged, so one of the things I do strongly believe is you give people enough room to be successful and you allow them to solve their problems. I think most of us have the challenge that if someone tells you they've got a problem, the immediate answer is to start problem solving for them and start telling them how to fix it. And I think you have to try and resist that as much as possible. There's a great phrase which is often overused, but when someone comes to you with a problem, I think one of the best responses you can have is, what do you suggest? And turn it back to them to see what their answer is. And if they say, I don't know, I need help, or I'm a bit confused about what would be the best answer, then I think it's okay to start unpacking it, but unpack it with them, rather than trying to give them packaged answers on a plate, because inevitably what's in your head will be slightly different to theirs and they'll go away and execute in a slightly different way. It's better that you work with them to problem solve and unpack so they have something they can then go and fill in the dots and take to the next step, knowing that you're starting from an aligned point. There's a little bit about feedback and coaching that's worth mentioning at this point, that I think we are all somewhat susceptible to criticism and find it hard to receive negative criticism at times. But I think that comes down largely to the environment you create of your team, that if they're feeling that things are overly critical, or if they're not 100% successful all the time, there is a threat to their, and not just their mental well-being, but potentially even their job. I think you need to think about the environment you're trying to create. And ultimately, whilst I don't believe in failing fast, moving fast and breaking things necessarily, I believe people should have the ability to try things out, identify if they're working, reset, and take a different direction if it makes sense, but to talk about why that is. So I think failing fast is okay, but not if you're doing it at the expense of thinking through what you're doing. So I'd rather people slowed down, thought, strategized, came up with a theory, tried it, and then based on that, made a tactical decision to continue or to switch. That's very different to me than just trying stuff, it breaks, okay, try something else, it breaks, try something else. I think you need that point of, I have a vision, I have a sub-vision which ladders up to that vision, and I have a plan of attack which I'm going to try out. It doesn't work, this is why it didn't work, and this is what I'm going to do as a result. That's a bit different in my book, and I think that's a good tactic to have. My fifth topic is communication and collaboration. So when you've got a team of diverse people who have different personality types and different skill sets, some of them are going to get on better with others. And you're going to have a difference of opinion quite regularly. And managing smart people, particularly smart opinionated people, is not easy. Nor would you want it to be. You want people who challenge things. You want people who have opinions, people who aren't afraid to say, I think you're talking rubbish. This is why. But you also need people who will listen. People who you can disagree with, and they know when to stop, when to park it, and when to get behind a decision that's been made either by the group or by the person who's ultimately accountable for the decision, which is probably you. So open communication is really important. Communication where you can be trusted and you can trust people will listen to you. People who you know will not always agree with you, and yet they're behind the success of the team more than they're behind their individual objective at that time. Part of that is having very predictable tools to communicate with. So having regular strategic review points to assess how you're doing against progress, to look at the reporting that you have. Certainly if you've got a creative lead working with a technology lead, they're probably not deep in the numbers of the business on a day-to-day basis. They're expecting that to be managed by your finance lead or even by you. So having the ability and the forum ready where you can share how things are doing so they can understand how their focus and their ability is laddering up to that overall financial health of the team or the company is really important. And I believe in having that transparency so people understand at a reasonably deep level how it all comes together and how the part that they play makes an overall contribution to the success of the business. I don't believe in hiding things from the teams. I think it's important to understand that if the utilization or the billability of the team has a direct connection to the overall business health, then it's something that you should put in front of the people who have the ability to address this, to affect it. And be that the people who are staffing the models of team that will deliver the products, or be it the people who are talking directly to the customers. It's important to show that at a level where people can understand how their influence affects the business as a whole, and have group conversations around what needs to change and talk about potential suggestions. I think one of the pitfalls that leaders often fall into is the expectation that they've got all the answers. And I actually like to turn it on its head and think that leaders are people who have the ability to get all the answers, but they don't necessarily have all the answers. And you get the answers by leveraging the brilliant, smart people you've hired to make up your team. There's a good suggestion that you never want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to surround yourself with smarter people than you. And by doing so, you'll make yourself more effective. And I think the same is true in building teams. I like to hire people who are brilliant, who have stronger opinions, who are more intelligent than me, and have an expert level of thought around a topic that I don't know as much about, that I learn from them on a daily basis. But my role is to be that little cog which connects the big cogs and keeps them all running at the fastest speed that they can, and still be engaged, still be fired up, still be enthusiastic and driven for what they're achieving. And when little stones get in the way of those cogs from working, my job is to get rid of those and allow them to run at maximum speed. So there's a few other elements that we haven't mentioned, which are how do you deal with failure, how do you deal with adversity in this environment, but also how do you deal with growth? How do you deal with somebody who's looking for the opportunity to grow their skill sets, who's looking to grow their own responsibility, or even to grow their experience across different areas, different sectors, different industries that maybe they've been working in one area for too long, but they're a critical part of that project? I'll go into those on a different podcast. For now, I think I'll leave it there and say those 5 elements of how we approach leadership and building high-performing teams is applicable whether you're building a junior team, whether you're building a very senior team. But those 5 key principles should lead us to a point of getting success, or at least the ability to control the levers which will prevent or allow us to have success. Let me know what you think.